Special event coming to the community of Cresco next week. There's a new series out called The Duel, a 19, I believe, 86 duel between Iowa and Iowa State with plenty of big names from the world of college wrestling. And that series is going to be making its way to Cresco next week. And here to talk about it is Jason Passmore with the Cresco Chamber and Howard County Economic Development. And Jason, tell us about what will be taking place next Monday and Tuesday night in Cresco.
You bet, Darren. I appreciate you chatting this up a little bit for us. We have been watching this from a little bit from afar and noticed that the Duel, this six-part docuseries, was making its way around the state of Iowa and just kind of previewing some of the episodes. Maybe episode one time, episode two another time, and they were getting a great response. But the closest they got to Northeast Iowa was maybe Waterloo. And we just thought Northeast Iowa loves wrestling. And what if we took a different angle on it and we went ahead and showed the whole thing? There's 6 episodes. Let's show 3 on one night and 3 on the next night. And we floated the idea by the director, and he loved it. So we are going to do that on December 18th and December 19th. That's a Monday night and a Tuesday night at the historic Cresco Theatre. So awesome place if folks have never been there, and it'll be a great night to relive one of the greatest duels of all time.
And give us the history of the duel for those that don't know.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, 86. I mean, you're looking at just about the end of the Iowa domination run of their 9 consecutive NCAA crowns from a team. Dan Gable has already created the dynasty, and Iowa State's working their way back, and all of a sudden 86 comes to pass. They've got a few ex-Hawkeyes on their staff, and you've got, I don't know what it is, 4 matches that are like the number 1 versus number 2 guys. Both teams are just absolutely loaded with defending national champions and going on to be national champions. It also is Jim Gibbons's first year as head coach at Iowa State. He's all of 26 years old back then, taking on the legend himself. And this docuseries, goes through each and every match. And there's a lot of Iowa guys that came from Iowa that wrestle each other. So some really cool matches. And arguably one of the greatest duels of all time. It was set in Ames, so you had the entire sports world looking upon Ames on that day.
And from what I understand, Monday and Tuesday night, you got some special introductions happening as well.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So, after we kind of got the okay from the director to show the whole thing, he floated the idea of bringing Jim Gibbons and Dan Gable up. So we are super stoked to have Jim Gibbons here on Monday night. He will introduce the film before we get her started. And he'll stick around, answer questions, and do whatever. Jim loves to talk wrestling, and you see him on TV all the time. And then Tuesday night, Dan Gable will be up, and he'll do the same thing. He'll kind of give his introduction for the last 3 episodes. Hopefully, we're trying to make sure Dan brings a couple boxes of books, so he can sign some of his autobiographies there that he's got. I don't. Sometimes Dan only brings a box, so they go quick. But man, what a great Christmas gift if you haven't figured out what to get your wrestling fan is to get an autographed book by Dan Gable. So those 2 guys are going to come up and help us out on these 2 nights. It's just going to be a free will offering. We're putting this on as the Iowa Wrestling Hall of Fame, based here in Cresco. As a nonprofit organization, we just love to promote the sport as much as we can. And we just thought, these guys have put a ton of effort. This is a first-class film. And what a better opportunity to come inside of a historic theater and see what's going on back in the day of 86 when this was the talk of the nation.
And the little bit I've seen of the previews of this docuseries, it also takes you a little bit back. I know the media landscape is a little different now than it was back then, but it also gets nostalgic on you and really brings out the deep appreciation that Iowa Public Television had in promoting college wrestling and kind of growing the sport back in the day, because a lot of this footage is from Iowa Public Television, from what I understand. Is that correct?
Amen. Yeah. That was probably when I was talking to the director here, John said that was probably the biggest hurdle that they had, was just working with Iowa Public Television, because they had all the filming. That's how we watched it back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
If everybody remembers, that's how we watched the high school tournaments, wrestling and boys and girls basketball, and IPTV had all the rights on that. So yeah, there's a ton of footage from them. They were huge partners in this. And then, kind of like you're saying, a little bit nostalgic there. There will be interviews back from then, from the who's who of broadcasting. And so you'll get to see snippets from those folks that were doing that, because you're right, we didn't have the whole social media craze back then. So you had your 3 to 4 networks, and that was about it. And everybody knew who the head cheese was for broadcasting out there. So that's kind of cool.
And you mentioned, obviously, anytime Dan Gable shows up at a wrestling event, that brings a crowd. That brings a lot of people from the wrestling world. And of course, Jim Gibbons coming up Monday night. There's always that special connection he has to Howard County.
You bet. Jim always loves coming up here, and both these guys serve on the Iowa Wrestling Hall of Fame selection committee, which goes a long way when we let people know that they got inducted, when they know that Dan and Jim were part of the selection crew. But yeah, Jim's uncle, Joe Frank, is from Cresco. He spent a ton of time up here. That's really the person that got him hooked in the wrestling. And, him and his brother was a 4-time state champ. So that Gibbons family runs deep in wrestling, and they were spending a lot of their days and younger years up here in Howard County in the Cresco area. So Jim's a huge champion of the Iowa Wrestling Hall of Fame. So excited to have him up here, and Dan is too. I mean, you give Dan a platform to talk about wrestling and to further advance the sport, he's going to do it. He doesn't even ask when or what, he just, yep, I'm there. And so Dan will be up here, and those two guys, phenomenal champions of our sport.
And you mentioned the presentations begin at 6:30, both Monday and Tuesday night. When do the doors open?
Thank you, Darren. Yes, so the films will start at 6:30 after the introductions. We will have full concessions, because 3 episodes is going to be close to 3 hours, maybe a little less here or there, depending on how fast we can move them through there. Doors will open an hour early if you want to talk to Jim on Monday or Dan on Tuesday, so you get a chance to do that. So 5:30 doors open, shows start at 6:30. And like I said, Jim will hang around even afterwards and talk to folks about what happened. We're also hoping that we haven't got it confirmed because we're working day to day here, but we're hoping some of the other participants that were in that great match might even make their way up here. So that would be really cool.
Well, we'll call that a tease, and hopefully it comes to fruition. Anything we're missing? Anything else you want to pass on about next Monday and Tuesday night, Jason?
No, it's I know it's an odd time on a Monday and a Tuesday evening. The docuseries will be available online for streaming after the holidays here. So this is kind of a one of a kind. This is the only time that they're showing and we're putting together the entire series on a big screen. They've only teased it out there with episode 1 or episode 2. So they are really allowing us up here as the Iowa Wrestling Hall of Fame to premiere this thing before it's available through streaming services. So we're very appreciative to the Duel and hope that we fill the historic theater.
All right, give us the final who, what, where, when, and why about the Duel coming to
The
Cresco
Duel. So
week.
at the Cresco Theater, Monday, December 18th and Tuesday, December 19th. Show starts at 6:30. Get there early. Doors open at 5:30.
Jason, appreciate you taking the time to tell us about a very special event coming to Cresco next week. And thanks for the time, as always. Most importantly, Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Happy holidays, Darren. Thank you.
Jason Passmore from the Cresco Chamber and Howard County Economic Development. The Duel going to be showing at the Cresco Theatre next Monday and Tuesday night.